So if he's going to be... For Tuesday, March the 11th, 2025. We will have roll call by Melissa.
Commissioner Edwards.
Here.
Commissioner Hendricks.
Here.
Vice Mayor Van Oster.
Here.
Mayor Maples.
Here.
And Commissioner Faulkner will be here. He's just running late.
Okay. We will have our invocation by Pastor John Franson of St. Paul's Lutheran Church. Welcome. Would everybody please stand?
Would you like me to use the
Yes,
mic?
please.
Okay.
You're on TV. And so if you're here, then they can see you and hear you.
Excellent. Let us pray. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Lord God, Heavenly Father, as you cared for the children of Israel through their wandering in the wilderness, keep our community under your care. Bless the leaders of our community, that we may be a people at peace among ourselves and a blessing to the other communities of this land. Grant that all who receive the sword as your servants may bear it according to your command. Enlighten and defend them, and grant them wisdom and understanding, that under their peaceable governance your people may be guarded and directed in righteousness, quietness, and unity. Protect and prolong their lives, that with them we may show forth praise of your name. Also grant those who are gathered here may contribute to wise decisions for the general welfare, and serve you faithfully in our generation. Through Jesus Christ our Lord, who lives and reigns with you in the Holy Spirit, one God, now and forever. Amen.
Thank you. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Pastor. We will now have a review of our agenda. We will start with the consent agenda, City Commission meeting minutes. For
Mayor
Tues-
Maples.
Yes.
We do have a change in the agenda
Okay.
to add an executive session.
Okay, so we want to change that to add an executive session.
I'll move to amend the agenda to add an executive session to discuss matters deemed privilege in the attorney-client relationship.
Second.
Motion is made by Vice Mayor Van Oster, seconded by Commissioner Edwards, to amend the agenda to add an executive session to discuss matters deemed privileged in the attorney-client relationship. Commissioner Hendricks.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Van Oster.
Aye.
Commissioner Faulkner.
Aye.
Mayor Maples.
Aye.
Commissioner Edwards.
Okay, now we will move on to our consent agenda. We have the City Commission meeting minutes for Tuesday, February 25th, 2025. We have Resolution R-25-21, a resolution to authorize the execution of a special warranty deed from the City of Coffeyville to Sterling of Pittsburgh County LLC for the conveyance of 1102 and 1104 West 10th Street. And then we have our 2025 appropriation ordinance number AO-25-05 in the amount of $5,037,094.65. Go ahead.
Okay, I will review some of the things that we have had on our appropriation ordinance. Algar Martin and Associates, that is for building and design professional services in the amount of $31,982.50. Ashland Tree Expert Company, this is tree trimming once again, $23,928.70. CDL Electric Company, this is part of the grant we received for the street light installation, the LED ones, $18,735.96. Commercial Bank, we have another payment on the fire truck that we purchased some time ago, $30,023.18. Grand River Dam Authority, this is for power purchase, $2,722,233.78. We have Hawkins Incorporated, that is for part of chlorine that they're billing to us for the contract, $16,412.21. We have Meridian Health, that is for health premiums, life premiums, $130,799.71. Midwest Electric Transformer, this is for transformer purchases, $31,092.93. We have Neil Hotels. This is for out there the Holiday Inn, one of those CID taxes that we did for them, the sales tax, $4,535.67. Superior Bowen Asphalt Company. This is for cold patch asphalt we used for our streets, $4,264.84. Switchgear Power Systems. This is paying estimate number 3 for the switchgear package that we purchased, $692,245. And then Wartsila North America Incorporated. These are for some items that we have been purchasing in conjunction with the repair and overhaul out there, $55,343.29. And then we had our monthly payment of sales tax distribution to Coffeyville Regional Medical Center for $93,258.28. That is it that I have.
Anybody have anything, any questions? Okay. All right. If there are no questions, I will move to approve items 1 through 3 of the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion is made by Mayor Maples, seconded by Commissioner Faulkner to approve items 1 through 3 of the consent agenda as presented. Vice Mayor Van Oster.
Aye.
Commissioner Faulkner.
Aye.
Mayor Maples.
Aye.
Commissioner Edwards. Commissioner Hendricks.
Aye.
Okay, we will move on to comments from the public. Any citizen desiring to address the commission shall be recognized, advance to the podium, state his or her name and address for the record. Comments shall be limited to 3 minutes unless extended by a vote of the majority of the commission. The commission does not hear matters involving litigation or city personnel. The commission does not take action on subjects not on the agenda unless unusual or hardship conditions exist. Citizens may address the commission on agenda items as they are brought to the floor. Does anyone have any comments?
Hello, my name is Amari DeVolt. I live here at the Mill Supply Apartments over on Union Street.
And what, where?
Apartment
I'm sorry,
105.
we missed that.
My name is
Where-
Amari DeVolt.
And what was your address?
About the Mill Supply Apartments. They
Okay,
were
Mill
going-
Supply, okay, thank you.
Yes, they're going to condemn them, but the Mill Supply is based off the flour mill here in Coffeyville. There's actually a historical plaque on the corner telling all about them and the Cleveland Apartments as well. They're actually historical. There's a plaque on the corner that tells all about them, throughout history, even dating back to the 1920s. Them as well as the Cleveland Apartments as well.
Okay.
On the mill supply? Are you
Yeah.
concerned
We have a
about?
flour mill here, correct?
Huh?
We have a flour mill here, correct?
No,
There's a,
Flour mill here?
yes, there
Yes,
is.
but it's clear down,
It's
Yeah.
on about 12th to 14th Street.
yeah, Bartlett
Yeah,
Mill.
and those are the Mill Supply Apartments.
But the Mill Supply Apartments is a relatively new building.
It does, well, it's based off, there's a historical plaque right on the corner. Me and the sheriff's office went and looked at it earlier. Well, earlier in the week, well, last week. Well,
There was an old building there before the
Yeah.
apartments. It was called the Mill Supply
Supply.
Building. And so those have just kind of become known as the Mill Supply Apartments.
And that was a store, like a hardware store.
But
Yeah,
they
and
are
it's
based
not
off
there
the Mill
anymore.
Supply.
And it has nothing to do with the flour mill.
So the Clevelands don't have anything to do with Cleveland either,
Right,
Not there.
but they're called the Cleveland Apartments.
correct.
That's just, yeah.
Correct, so they are historical.
Not
No,
necessarily.
They're not.
They may be called something from in a historic perspective, but the buildings themselves may not be old.
But since they're from a historical perspective, wouldn't they have it on the same meeting?
No.
You sure?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
No, I mean, you can call anything, a new building, anything you want.
Is your concern with the mill supply apartments?
My concern was with code enforcement, because they were enforcing, like, for me, code enforcement, enforce a code good, bad, or indifferent. It doesn't just mean to tear down, sometimes it means to repair or bring up.
Are you afraid they're going to tear down the mill supply apartments?
Well, that was, they were saying that they were the one to condemn them,
Who told you that?
Yeah.
code enforcement. And me and the sheriff's office went to code enforcement, and they had the same take I did as far as putting the Cleveland apartments back.
Yeah, so Commissioners, I can speak to some of the history in the last few months of the Mill Street Apartments. We did go over there and do some condemning, if you will. We had to
yes.
remove residents out of, I believe, the top 2 floors. The stairways up to that 4th floor were rotting away from the building.
Yeah, I
but
do have 2
since
maintenance
then-
men that are willing to work on it.
Yeah, since then, the owner has come in and has replaced those, and that's been a few months now since they've got those replaced, really before winter set in.
Yeah.
So those should be decent, but, we're
There's
happy
no-
to send code enforcement back out and to look and to check again if that's something that we have concern for.
Because as far as I know, the Clevelands, I went to the Chamber of Commerce, that has a list of landlords and properties on there, and the Clevelands are still mentioned, and that is the updated list of this year. And the Cleveland apartments are still on there as of this year.
Yeah, and the Chamber of Commerce, from a membership base, we don't really control, what members are on there, who's paying. It could be that that's just an out-of-the-area owner that's keeping that name on there.
Well, why would you keep the name of the Cleveland apartments on there as a list of properties and landlords if it's actually gone?
Yeah, I'd be a question for the Chamber.
Yeah.
But the mill supply apartments, we're aware of
Yeah,
some
they're
issues
still there.
that have been
Yeah,
going
they're
over
still there.
there.
Yeah, they're
and
But
there.
it mentions
city
the Clevelands
manager.
it's historical plaque, the Clevelands are mentioned in there as well, in the plaque on the corner.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. We will now move on to our regular agenda items. We have no public hearings, old business, second reading of ordinance S-25-02, a home rule ordinance of the city of Coffeyville, Kansas, relating to the Coffeyville Regional Medical Center. And I believe we will table that.
That's correct. We're asking to table that again, Commissioners.
Okay.
Okay.
The hospital still is going back and forth with Capers, and we don't have a final answer on the implications that they may be hearing about.
Okay.
Move to table ordinance S-25-02.
I'll second.
Motion is made by Commissioner Edwards, second by Vice Mayor Van Oster to table ordinance S-25-02. Commissioner Faulkner.
Aye.
Mayor Maples.
Aye.
Commissioner Edwards.
Aye.
Commissioner Hendricks.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Van Oster.
Aye.
Okay, and now we will move on to the second reading of ordinance S-25-03, an ordinance rezoning 1102 and 1104 West 10th Street from R1 Single Family Residential to R2 Two Family Residential.
I will move to approve our second reading of ordinance S-25-03 as presented.
Second.
Motion is made by Vice Mayor Van Oster, seconded by Commissioner Faulkner to approve the second reading of ordinance S-25-03 as presented. Mayor Maples.
Aye.
Commissioner Edwards.
Aye.
Commissioner Hendricks.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Van Oster.
Aye.
Commissioner Faulkner.
Aye.
Okay, moving on to new business. Did we change things?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yes, on new business, Mayor Commissioner, if you don't mind, we would like to move that to the first item we discuss as UFS will be on the phone, and we wanted to make sure that they weren't waiting around for us to continue the meeting. So
Okay.
we'd like to go ahead
Oh, okay.
and move that to the first item of
Okay.
business.
Okay, so that would be resolution, number 4?
No, that's going to be new business item number 5, discussion on production cost
Okay.
adjustment and electric rates.
Okay, so that one, number 5 is going to be moved to number 1.
Yes.
Okay.
With that, Commissioners, then we're going to go ahead and get UFS on the phone and turn the PowerPoint on for the public. So if you just give us a few moments here, we'll get that going.
Okay, thank you.
I got it, yeah. We have the conference phone up there.
Probably put this up here, and then we had a problem with hearing before, so we may just need to.
Can we just stick a microphone here? Would that help? Would that help if the microphone was there?
I think with it on.
Okay, pick up.
Here, we
Okay.
can reiterate if you get
Feedback.
text messages of the public.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that when they're talking,
Yeah.
we can all hear.
This is Jill. You met her on a Zoom meeting.
Yes,
okay.
yes. Yeah, that's,
Hello, this is Jill Jersey.
Hi Jill, Ben Brubaker here. Thank you for answering.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes, can you hear us?
Yes, great, and I can see the slides on YouTube as well.
Okay, great. I'm going to go ahead and just start off here, Commissioners, real quick, with a few thoughts and why we have this on here the way we do. You'll notice that it is just a discussion item. So to be very clear, there's no decisions that we're asking for tonight. We wanted to make sure that we go through this, that you have an opportunity over the next 2 weeks to reach out with questions that we can get either from UFS or from our utility, our electric utility. We know this is an important decision to make. It's important to our residents as well, and we want to make sure there's plenty of time. As you know, just a quick history, we have had a special meeting on this to go through these rates. We've had a few discussions in here. We found some issues. Chris actually, Chris and his team should be applauded for finding some issues with our PCA. We believe we have rectified those issues and have a plan to move forward, and so we will discuss that a little bit this evening. And then what you're going to see in this PowerPoint is some different scenarios that Jill's going to walk through with us. There is a recommendation ultimately that we'll bring back, partly based on the conversation we have with you today, and we'll go through each of those scenarios and what staff believes they mean. Again, to paint the background, and where I'm a little bit I've been trying to be hyper vigilant in my new role here, and I believe Chris and team are as well, is to just make sure that we are articulating what the changes to utility rates mean to both the budget. Obviously, you have the perspective of the public, those that voted you on that end, so we are really pushing to articulate what it means both to our budget and to keeping the asset, which is a utility, alive and thriving. And of course, we're doing that based on recommendations and calculations that UFS has provided. So that's the intro that I'll give, and I'll kind of turn it over to Chris and Jill here.
Thank you again for the time to visit with you regarding the rates here for the utility. And certainly, I know we're trying to keep this somewhat short, but allow Jill to go through a brief explanation here on her PowerPoint of kind of what we're proposing here. But certainly want to allow for some discussion, and like Ben said, hopefully have an opportunity to engage in that conversation with each of you over the course of the next couple weeks. If you have questions, to try and answer any questions or provide any additional information you may have or more may desire, so that way hopefully here at the next meeting or two we're able to get these get something approved here. So just a caveat there, our rates, our wholesale rates did increase 4% in October, and so we have not increased since then. Obviously, our wholesale rates will go up another 4% this October, and they'll go up another 4% the following October. So our rates are increasing, and we need to try and obviously be able to keep our costs, our revenues in line to be able to keep up with those costs as they increase. So with that said, Jill, I believe you're on the phone. You want to go ahead and lead us off?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And thank you, Commissioners, for taking the time tonight and for your understanding with us giving you the slides a little bit later than intended. You know, this is a lot of information, so really I just want to walk you through what we've been looking at, and then leave time for discussion. We're not going to be taking action on these items tonight, so hopefully this will give you some additional context so that you can think through what decision you ultimately would like to make. But my name is Jill Jerzik, and you all met me during the work session back in December. But for those of you who don't know me, my education is in mathematics and economics, but I've worked with UFS doing finance and rates since 2013. UFS has been around since 2001. They provide financial planning, cost of service, and rate design studies all across the country. So if we want to go to the first slide to look at the power cost adjustment, this is the first item I'd like to discuss today because you have a very complex power cost adjustment. And after really digging in and taking the time to understand how it works and looking through your tariff language, we realized that we needed to make a couple of tweaks to the actual model calculation in order to use it in the way it was designed in accordance with your actual tariff. So the first thing is that we wanted to clarify the loss adjustment factor. So essentially what this is a factor that accounts for any unit that we don't bill, like city use and lighting. We don't bill those kilowatt hours, so there's no PCA revenue that would be associated with those units. Historically, to account for that adjustment factor, we've just used a 7% adjustment. But the tariff specifies that this adjustment factor should be calculated every year. And if the loss or adjustment factor exceeds 7%, then we need to use that revised factor in the next year. So the loss factor that we should be using in this year is actually 14% according to this calculation. So we want to bring this up to you so you're aware of some of the changes in the actual calculation that we intend to move forward with to be in line with that actual tariff language. But we would also like to update the tariff language itself because the way that it's calculated is using what's called a rolling average methodology. And this methodology was adopted back in 2023 with really the purpose of helping to mitigate fluctuations in customer bills. Because what was happening is we were having a lot of volatility in the power supply market. So that power cost adjustment was really jumpy from month to month and causing really large variations on your customer bills. So we changed the calculation to a rolling average method to smooth out those variations from month to month. And we need to update the actual tariff language to reflect that change. I want to just take a pause quick here. I don't know, Chris, if you want to add anything to that, and if not, we can move on to the next slide.
Quick question. What was the time frame for the rolling average? How long?
It's a 6-month rolling average. So we're looking at 6 months previous usage and power supply costs.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I think the only thing that I'd really add to that would just be to say, you know, the under collections she's referencing here have been fairly significant. Just looking back the past couple years, you know, and that's going to make a big difference in terms of future revenues. But obviously that's a double-edged sword in that we're going to collect more revenue, which is good for the utility, good for the city. But on the same hand, somebody has to pay for that revenue. And so that's our consumers, our residents, our businesses that will be, that have been effectively seeing a discount on their bill for the past few years because we haven't been capturing our losses correctly. And so we have not been calculating our PCA correctly. And therefore, the PCA should have been higher. Over the past year, we have had a 0 PCA every month. And so moving forward, we will not have a 0 PCA every month. The last time we had a positive PCA, I believe, was February of 2024. And I think we had one in maybe January and February of 24, and before that it was zeros as well for a few months back in 23. And so that's been due to, as Jillian said, the loss factor, city usage, as well as our generation numbers have increased over the past few years. And so as those numbers have gone up, that was impacting our calculations in the PCA because we were not removing those generated units from that calculation. We were calculating that we were selling those units to our consumers, and so we needed to calculate that into the PCA, but we were not selling those units to our consumers. We were essentially giving those units to GRDA, who then was sending those out to the grid, et cetera. So we should not have been appropriating that in that formula.
Ben, might suggest that that needs to be carefully and articulated to the public, because it's a hard sell to tell somebody, well, you've been getting it at a discount for years and for a long time, and now we're going to return your bill to where it really should be. But from the consumer standpoint, my bill's going up. So they need to know they need to know exactly what's been going on.
Absolutely, and that's one thing I will add that is a benefit of using the rolling average methodology, is we're not going to look historically back at the months where we should have used a 14% loss factor. We're going to implement the 14% loss factor from going forward. So each month, a 0 PCA will drop off and be replaced by a PCA of value. But it won't be all of a sudden a jump up to the full PCA. So over the 6-month time frame, we will gradually build to the PCA that should technically be charged.
Thank you.
So it certainly should make that implementation more gradual and easier to stomach for our residents, but that realistically will be hitting where you have a full 6 months of more than likely positive PCAs around October to November timeframe. Just so you're aware, the residents and businesses are aware that that's probably the time frame when they're going to start to see within that 6-month calculation that, that's when you're going to have probably no zeros remaining. Moving forward, Jill has calculated that we're probably going to average a little over 1 cent per month PCA. It's going to fluctuate based upon what the actual loss factor is for that month and what our actual power supply costs are for that month. We still may wind up with a 0 PCA every once in a while, or a very low PCA every once in a while for that month. That helps bring that average down, that rolling average down. But we could have some higher months as well. For instance, for this past month, in calculating that, we were looking at about a 2 cent PCA with the calculations that we should have been using all along. So even though we're going to average about a 1% or a 1 cent adder, some months are going to be higher, and so hopefully we're able to still see a relatively lower cost though moving forward. But to give you an idea of the magnitude here we're talking about, that's in 24, had we been implementing this rate, we'd been looking at about another $1.2 million in revenue. In 23, had we implemented the PCA correctly, that would have been about another $2.3 million in revenue beyond what the utility brought in. So it's a substantial amount of revenue that we're talking about here. It's definitely going to be beneficial in helping us realize the adjustments that we need to make moving forward with the utility needs, and help us to stabilize, hopefully, a path moving forward where we're able to absorb these rate increases as we go without having to adjust even further. You've all done a terrific job of putting the city in a very strong financial position that, frankly, over the past few years, the costs have been astronomical. The inflation on our system, transformers have gone up in some cases 4 times what they were. For staff raises, et cetera. We're for the first time since 22 asking for a rate adjustment, and even then, that was frankly, a rate decrease for most people. So we're really looking at 2018 was the last time that we saw a rate increase for most people. And we went through COVID without a rate increase. We went through a number of years and absorbed cost increases. So it's all because of your leadership and getting us in a good financial position to be able to absorb that over time. But obviously now we need to try and address those issues moving forward. So.
And I will say that the slides you're about to see moving forward in calculations are making the assumption that, there's no issues with doing a correct PCA moving forward. So the next slides include that adjustment.
Yes, thank you. Any other questions or comments on the power cost adjustment before we move into the financial projection?
No.
Okay. We can go to the next slide that says rate study process. We conduct 3 studies for you, but our focus today is really on that financial projection. So we do a financial projection, which is historically looking back at trending budget so that we can look out 5 years and apply inflation, our expected changes in power supply costs, our capital plans, our bonding, and this gives us a financial picture to help us see where we are going in the future. And in order to get an idea about what type of rate adjustments we might need to financially support the system over those 5 years, and in order to develop that rate track, we consider 3 key financial targets, which you're going to see. We look at debt coverage ratio, we look at your cash balances, and we look at your operating income. So these 3 targets help inform what our rate track should be over the 5 years to maintain our financial health. And you're going to see that we do show the need for increases, and we'll talk through what's driving that. You'll also see a few scenarios that we've put together for you to consider, and then you can decide how you'd like to move forward. And just like Chris said, I want to just commend you. Coffeyville has worked with UFS for many years, and you've always done a very good job of maintaining your financial targets and keeping up with your rate adjustments. And just like he said, you've been able to maintain your current rates during a very volatile time for the general economy and sure for your customers as well. And because you have historically made great financial decisions, you were able to extend a period of rate stability to your customers when many other utilities were needing quite large and emergency type adjustments. So with that, I want to take a look at the financial projection on the next slide. And this rate track is showing your financial picture if we made no changes apart from updating the few elements in the power cost adjustment. So this does have those changes to the power cost adjustment. The financial targets in this slide and all subsequent slides are going to include that update to the PCA. So debt coverage ratio, which is the 3rd column in, debt coverage ratio tells us if we are cash flowing enough from operations to make our debt payments. So typically, for financial planning purposes, we target a 1.4, 1.45 minimum. And that's just because you can have fluctuations in revenue recovery from year to year, even due to something as simple as weather. And we never want you to be in violation of your bond covenant. So you can see that without any rate adjustment with our current outstanding debt, we are exceeding this minimum for the projection. So debt coverage ratio is really our floor when we're designing our rate track, meaning we need to exceed this minimum because we never want you to be in violation of those bond covenants. So I would say that target is met and looks good. Operating income is the next 2 columns. So we show the adjusted operating income, which is what we are projecting your operating income to be in each of the 5 years. And then our optimal operating income, which is like our upper boundary target. for operating income. So operating income is operating revenue less operating expense. And in our calculation, we call it adjusted because we also include that general fund transfer. We want to make sure that you're able to pay that. So as a municipal, we aren't in the business of making a profit, but we do need to maintain a positive operating income. Operating income allows us to fund two things that aren't included in that operating income calculation of revenue less expense. It allows us to fund our interest expense on debt and then the inflationary increase in our capital costs. So that's that $5.5 million target in year 2025 that you see. And you can see that with no rate adjustments, our actual operating income is minimal or negative throughout the 5 years. And then our last target is our cash balances, the last two columns in the table. Now, we want you to hold a minimum of around $19 million. And I understand that that may seem like a lot of cash, but this minimum value is comprised of 5 items. Okay, so we look at your O&M expense. There's a timing difference between when you pay your bills and when you receive your cash from your customers. So we need to recognize that working capital lag and make sure that we have money in the bank to pay your bills. We recognize a portion of your power supply expense. So we look at the highest month power supply bill in the year, and we hold that in reserve so that we can always make our power supply payment. We want you to hold that annual debt service payment. That's really important. We also want 20% or 1/5 of your 5-year capital improvement plan for your infrastructure investment. And that makes sure that you have money in the bank to be able to fund that capital. We also have a rainy day allotment just to recognize that unexpected events can occur, like an ice storm or a windstorm. We want you to have some money in reserve to begin repair and replacement process. And so in order to recognize that, we look at your total investment in assets, and I assigned a 2% risk factor. So all of those items together make up the $19 million. And this is just a minimum, so keep that in mind because you'll see with these various scenarios, cash is going to fluctuate above that minimum, and it really depends on where you're at in your capital program. And you can see that currently we're sitting at about $14.5 million, and we're spending down our cash throughout the 5 years.
Excuse me, you said 2%?
2% risk factor, yes.
Okay, is this a standard number, industry number? I know in previous my previous budgeting life at the federal level, I always got beat up for trying to budget for contingencies. So.
Right. Yep. So the way that we kind of look at it, and I guess you could call this a UFS special. So UFS has been looking at minimum cash this way since the company started, and we do a lot of teaching through the American Public Power Association, so it's become somewhat of a standard, although there are different ways of assessing that risk. But we look at the percent plant depreciated, and so if you're a newer system or you're less than 50% depreciated, we'll assign a 1% risk factor. You're between 50 and 60% depreciated, so you have that middle 2% risk factor, and then anything over 60%, we would assign a 3% risk factor. And it's essentially saying if the infrastructure is newer, it's a little less susceptible to unexpected events, and if the infrastructure is older, then it's a little more susceptible to those events. So you fell right in the middle, and that's why we have the 2%.
All right, thank you. That makes sense.
Thank you. Any other questions on the current rate projection?
No.
Okay. We can move ahead to the next slide. The next slide is not a rate scenario for consideration. It's more informational. We just wanted to illustrate the impact on the electric rates of the mill levy decrease. So prior to the information that I had about the mill levy decrease, I was projecting a 3.5% adjustment for 3 years. The decrease in the mill levy essentially translates to increased operating expenses for the electric utility. And you'll see on the next slide the impact of that decrease. Instead of 3.5%, I had to bump up the percentage to 4.5%. So if we want to go to the next slide, we can see that scenario. And I'm going to call this scenario 1. So this is the first scenario that I want us to actually kind of look at and consider as an option. So we're showing a 4.5% adjustment for 3 years with the increased expense for the mill levy decrease. I'm also including here a $3 million bond to help with funding for a substation update, and that substation update project is around $4 million. So this rate track has an average monthly impact on a residential bill of around $5 a month. And I want to be completely transparent again and remind you that the dollar impact is of the 4.5% increase. When we start calculating the PCA in accordance with the tariff, it will likely increase this impact. So you know the PCA has been calculating at 0, and while over the next 6 months, the 0 PCA months are going to drop off, like we talked about, and we'll start seeing a charge for the PCA on the bill. And so worst case scenario, I was kind of looking at it translating to approximately $7 to $8 of additional monthly impact on an average user's bill if our power costs remain high. So I just want to be very clear and transparent about that. Now looking at our target, this rate track still meets our debt coverage ratio. Remember, this is including an additional bond issuance. It moves our operating income in the right direction, so we're working toward that optimal amount of funding. We don't get all the way there, but that's okay. And our cash balances are satisfactory throughout the projection. So the bond, what it does is it helps us to recover our cash balances a bit quicker, since we have that large project in 2025. Now, I wasn't sure your feelings on bonding. So on the next slide, we ran this scenario to show the financials at 4.5% without bonding so that you can see that impact. So here on this next slide, we're calling it scenario 2, and we have 3 years at the 4.5%. It translates to the same impact on the monthly bill. And you can see that our operating income is still working in the right direction. The biggest difference is on that cash balance. So we do recover to our minimum, but we don't do it until 2027. So it just takes an additional year to get to that recommended minimum amount if we don't issue the bond. So I just wanted to give you both of those scenarios, and I'm going to give you one more option to consider on the next slide. We're calling this next scenario, scenario 3. And this is showing no bonding, but with a front-loaded increase of 7% for the first 2 years, opposed to 4.5% for 3 years. And just another reminder, again, this is not including those potential PCA impacts. So the total residential impact at the end of the adjustment period, whether we do a 2-year adjustment period or a 3-year adjustment period, the end is essentially the same on the impacts between the 7% and the 4.5%. And again, the main difference here is really in that cash balance recovery. So we can see that our cash recovers in 2026 opposed to 2027, like we saw in scenario 2.
I have a question.
Yes.
In options 1, I'll address 1 and options 1 and 3. the recommended cash balance. Now is that just a financial number that you're recommending, or has there been any input from city staff regarding that number's impact on the city's budget during the years in question?
Jill's not answering, so,
Question.
oh.
I'm not, oh, I'm sorry.
In other words, if we went ahead, if we did 1 or 3, and we wound up with a recommended minimum cash, which she's talking 19 million, and the projected cash balance column was also 19 million, would that be sufficient to meet the, I'll call it the 5-year projections for the budget? Would that be sufficient funds to operate as we have in the past?
So, it's interesting here, because we, oh, go ahead,
Now,
Jill.
where this is going, that's sort of where I'm leading
Yeah.
up to, is what would it take and what would it look like to do, and for lack of a better term, I'll use a trickle backwards through the spreadsheet to make to force the projected cash balance column equal to the recommended cash balance, and as it trickles backwards through the spreadsheet to see what that projected rate adjustment would be under that scenario. Does that make sense?
Yeah, now you're looking at, Jill, you go first.
Okay, so I think so. One thing with cash is that it fluctuates depending on that capital plan. So you'll see that you'll build cash, and then you'll have a big capital project, and you'll spend the cash down. It can be tricky to get your cash balances to line up perfectly with that number. And that's why we always call it a minimum cash opposed to a target cash, because of the timing element, and the capital is so dependent on what your cash balances actually are. If you designed a rate track to meet the recommended minimum in each year and not exceed it, what you would see is very jumpy rate adjustments. So in one year, you may have a higher rate adjustment, and then in the next year, you may see a negative adjustment, and it would fluctuate from year to year.
What I was going to add to that is the calculations that go into this is a lot of looking at the last several years, a lot of coming and consulting with staff on what do we project in the future, capital improvements, of course also that 50%, 50 to 60% life of your asset. So that's what I was going to say. The difficulty there is it's not an exact science on even what we're going to need in cash. It's attempting to look to the future. We know right now we're at the 22,000 hour mark, and what do we need next for adjustments, and what are so it's just that whole asset. So all of those things go into that conversation, but to Jill's point, it's hard for an exact science. Could we go and just look at cash balances and come to the rate? We could approach it that way, but those cash balances are also subjective to things that are going to come up.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. That was a good question. Okay, the last slide that I have here is more informational. So the next slide is not a scenario, but for information, if an additional mill levy decrease goes through in 2026, just looking ahead, it would likely translate into an additional rate adjustment. Because again, that mill levy decrease works like an additional expense to the electric department. So when we ran this scenario, I was projecting an approximately 4% adjustment in 2027 after the 2 years at 7%.
Isn't it true that that statement is based on the assumption that we don't make cuts to the budget to save expenses and that we want to keep revenues the same? from 25 to 26.
Correct. Correct. That is keeping all else equal. I did not change any other expenses from the budget.
And all of these slides are also making that same base assumption going from 24 to 25, correct? That we're not making any cuts to expenses. We're wanting, and I'm thinking back to when this past summer when we voted to reduce the mill levy. I can't, and I wouldn't speak for the other four commissioners. My intention was for there to be cuts. I never, and in fact, I said during the sessions that I wanted to see us make cuts to make up that $1.2 million. And in fact, the interim city manager had told us that we had made a change in our banking procedures, and we were capturing about that much additional revenue from an interest off of what we had in the bank, and that we would be able to use that, at least for this first year, to buy down that expense. I personally remember stating on more than one occasion, I didn't want to just cut the mill levy and turn right around and raise the electric rates. But everything that we're discussing here now is based on the assumption that we gave the folks a tax cut, and with the intention of turning around and recapturing that money through a utility rate increase. That's not what, I'm just speaking for myself. I never signed up for that. I was very clear at the time, and I want to be very clear now. I'm still not signing up for that.
Okay.
Well, and I do want to add to that, I did update my numbers with your most recent financial history, and the numbers that I had on the cash side did come out better than what I was initially projecting. So I think that between the budget that I had for 2024 and the actuals that I updated for 2024 that you're seeing throughout this presentation, I think that did come through. So I think we were in a better position either through lower expenses or higher interest earnings, a combination of both. But for this scenario here, going from the 2025 and 2026 budget, I didn't make any additional expense cuts for that additional $1 million.
So the rate study that we saw of the other Kansas electric generators, whether they be city-owned or private-owned, in those numbers that we were presented, were the PCAs that those entities have or may have, were they included in their rates? What they were charging?
Yes. Now, Jill didn't come up with those figures. That was all, I got that from KMEA. But yes, their PCAs were included in those figures.
Okay, because I didn't see anything mentioned about, I would look back to that material earlier today, and I didn't see anything about PCA mentioned in there. It just had the base rate, kilowatt hour, based on X number of kilowatt hours, 1,000 kilowatt hours, for instance. And here's how we would stack up.
Didn't you average in the
Yeah.
PCA to basically be an average rate?
Yeah, so I have all that detailed data. If you'd like to see more.
Well, if you've got it, I trust you that you've got it.
Okay.
I'm just curious how many of them
I think you did,
are misfiguring their PCAs too.
well,
I
we
will
can't
say,
that.
We may not
can't do
want
anything
to
about
know
it,
that we're the
obviously.
only one. That's
Okay, go ahead.
I was just going to speak to Commissioner Edwards, and you're right. We are, with the process we're showing and the multiple scenarios, early on we expected to come in with one scenario, and that's why we are showing multiple, because we know that opinions vary across the board on the impacts of both what the mill did and should electric carry that. So, we can even, although we said informational, you can go back and look at the 3.5% as what the initial recommendation was from UFS without considering that mill decrease. Now, it's not on there, but I think, the bond question would still come up if you did the 3.5%. We internally, Chris and I, were trying to avoid a bond simply because we are looking into the future on other major projects that may come and not trying to tie ourselves down with too much there. So that's the reason that's come off. As far as the mill, you will see also that we're putting $1 million on there. It was about a 1.3 cut. We also can very quickly go throughout the community, and Commissioner Hendricks has brought this up, new buildings revenue that may come in, even though we've cut the mill from other builds. Of course, we've had houses, CRNF built a big admin building. So we could see increase in the revenues even at the 26 mills. We do have interest that we've approached differently thanks to Tim Wilson than the city has in years, and so that is a factor. We also have our water utility. Independence relies very heavily on their water utility for those extra revenues. The city here has leaned much more on electric utility. Today, Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, it's about $2.6 million in the last few years that the electric utility has been supplementing into the general fund. And so with that reduction, one of the things I said is we can find ways, and I think we are looking for opportunities for other revenues to make up that 1.3 million, but we're trying to make sure in your mind look, this electric utility, and now that I know, I don't know why anyone would ever want to go work at a city and have to deal with what most cities in Kansas are dealing with. You have an amazing asset that this community has come together.
We do.
And for 2.6 million is funding the general fund on top of taking care of itself. But we're also, we
It's
have
a
to look
cash
to the
cow.
future. Yeah, it is, but we also, as mentioned, 50 to 60% of that life. We already know one of our
Yeah, and the cow has to be maintained.
Yeah, it does need to be maintained. Something that I have said, and I've been thinking of the terminology I'm using, and we'll call my 9 months here so far education on that, is one of the words I've used in conversation is increase in services. And I don't mean an increase as much as I mean if there's an expectation for services, what I believe is the city has been not meeting that expectation. And so without doing anything and cutting the mill, it makes it even more, harder, more difficult to get up to the level of services, I believe, when we start talking about roads and community development and code enforcement, the things we want to accomplish. You've had, from all that I can tell, multiple years of city manager recommending reductions in all of those things and cuts.
It was that way for a better part of 20 years, yeah.
Yeah. So that's one of the caveats in the decision. I just want to make sure to point out is this is your words, Commissioner, cash cow. This is a revenue generator that most cities do not have the luxury of, and most cities are up campaigning with the governor and the legislature not to touch property taxes at all, and things are happening up there, and we watch it closely. So we're very unlike, and we want to make sure that we're communicating all those options and those impacts for you to make those decisions.
Ultimately, the big question is how much revenue is enough? I guess that's what I'm saying. I remember I think it was May, we got our annual report back from the independent company that audits our books every year as per state law. And correct me if I'm wrong, because I just looked in my backpack. I didn't bring it with me because I actually had it out reading it again at home and didn't put it in my backpack before I come up here tonight. Was the document towards the front, in the first few pages, it shows basically a balance sheet. And I want to say that we generated, and this is the 2023, that during the fiscal year 2023, we generated, I'm operating off memory here and I could be wrong, $10 million in unencumbered cash. Does that sound about right?
I don't want to be wrong either, so.
Okay.
We'll just nod and go look at it.
I'm saying this
afterwards.
from memory, but I'm wanting to say that, because I thought, oh my gosh, we almost generated,
That sounds high.
the thought I had was that we almost generated $1 million basically of profit from somewhere, a month during that fiscal year.
Well, so I think several ways to analyze that. One is just looking at the sheet and the cash balances we're trying to maintain. So when you go look at that from the entire books and you look at these sheets, and we're trying to get from an 18 million, 19 million up to 24 over those years.
Yep.
So that I would say both Tim Wilson and myself and Marty, and as we were looking at those books when I first came on, Tim kept saying there's something missing, and this report has been huge to open a lot of new staff's eyes to our cash balances.
I appreciate all the information that you all have been giving us. I've never seen this topic torn down to this level before, and I appreciate it. I really do.
Well, and so, you look at those cash balances. If we just go back of the napkin really quick, if we're at, let's say, 70 million today, and you need, for easy number, I'm going to say 20 million to be stored and ready, right? Now you're jumping down to 50.
Mm-hmm.
We are now looking at our water utility like we have never before because of this exact thing. We're going through
Right.
these same studies. There can be an assumption there if we just call it half. There's another 10 million.
Yep.
We already are at about 20 million encumbrances. Very quickly, that's $50 million of the 70 million in cash.
Yep.
And it just keeps going down. We can go look at remaining cash that is sales tax that has to be used very specifically.
Sure.
We've looked at the roads, we've looked at parks and the cash that's in there. So I don't want that, and I will say, I came in early on saying, wow, what is going on? Look at all this money. This is amazing. And the 9 months of diving into all of this, now my tune is, oh my gosh, we don't have enough. We got to be careful in there.
Yeah.
So I'm very concerned with making sure that the brand new city manager here, who has never run a city, is articulating all points and pointing out the potential crevices that you could fall into. We don't want that. And I think I've seen a history, 20 years, 5 years, 10 years, where that's been presented to commission over and over again. So we are just really trying to hone in so that you can make and recommend appropriate decisions for what the future is going to be.
Yeah.
I talked to Todd at Chanute about, because we had heard what they had done. So 3 years ago,
The city
they
manager.
City manager, excuse me, yep. They cut their mill completely. That was not his proposal, but the commission decided to go that way. They wanted to incrementally do it. They have raised their rates every year since, like about 8 to 7%, not the 18 that I was hearing. But the other thing to keep in mind there is their mill levy was like 32 mills, where we were up at 56. So
Yeah.
the difference in cash value to them was much more minor
Smaller.
than we are.
Yeah, it was a smaller impact.
We used to be in the 30s in the mill levy,
Back in the
15,
day,
20
yeah.
years ago.
Yeah.
Back in the day, not that far. But
That's back when I was mayor.
A lot of people did.
Back when I wasn't old.
I appreciate the
It's been a while.
financial analysis, and
I haven't been old.
I would, listening to this, reading the information, I would probably be somewhere around scenario 2 for me. And one reason is, like you said, I'm thinking, why do you want to take out a bond when just to have a cash balance in case you need it? And what I'm thinking is, okay, if something does happen, how long does it take to get a loan, a bond of that amount? And we could pull that lever when we get there instead of doing it prematurely
Yeah, there's
and
no
paying
reason.
interest on that. Like you said, why do you want to pay interest on a $3 million loan just to have a cash balance that you may or may not need? So I don't want to do that. And then the fact that looking at what you stated with GRDA projecting to raise their wholesale rate to us 4.5%, what, 3 times?
They're 4%, but yes, 3 times.
4%, 3 times, and then we don't know after that
Right.
whatever's going to happen. And obviously equipment has gone up. So like you said, when we came in here in January 14 months ago or so, we had this cash balance, and now we've had a major engine rebuild. We've bought some equipment for different departments, it just ticked down quickly. And I'm looking at what, like you said, what is Transformers going to be 3 years from now, 4 years from now? I mean, we're into 29. What's going to happen? You're wanting another substation. We're already doing it one. We're doing another. Those are what, 3 to 4 million? And then coming in, I will say, when we had work session last summer, I didn't really see a lot of budget cuts. I thought we were going to look at what could be done. Not saying it would be done, but again, eliminate waste. What could we do there? Not saying there is, but we were going to look at it. There may not be, and expenses be the same. But I did, coming in, have the idea that I wanted to incrementally raise up the electric rate to have more transfer to the general fund to lower the mill levy a little bit. We did the half, shock and awe, but after that, I was thinking 1 or 2 at a time, 3 at a time. And this 4% in scenario 3, I don't know what the assumption was, but to me it sounds like another decrease of 10 to 20, when in my mind I'm thinking, what would it be if you just reduced the mill levy by 1 or 2?
Yeah.
Nothing
So
big.
the 3.5, if you recall, was UFS before they even knew we did something with the mill. We brought that up and said we want $1 million out of that electric utility,
Oh, you
so it
just-
changed to 4.5.
Okay.
So if what we're talking about here is correct, and you wanted a very small because of the mill, that's the proposal is only 1% increase to cover mill.
Right.
3.5 is purely taking care of the assets and the utility, how it should.
Well, and I'm already seeing people have complained to me, at least, is their appraised value has gone up. So if we're looking at dollars, and everybody, buildings and things, the appraised value went up 10%. If we don't change the mill, we're going to get 10% more out of that. So if we reduced it 1 or 2, dollar-wise, we'd still be a little bit ahead, dollar-wise. People don't care. They care about how much tax they pay, not where their appraised value is on their house, less so, until they go to sell it. But it's how much tax they're paying. So that's where my brain's going with all of this. I just wanted to make that clear.
Well, and then I think we've had a very reliable utility for years. And we want to set ourselves up for the future to have that same very reliable utility for years to come. And you really need to.
Oh, yeah. And you just said it's a cash cow. I'm looking at other cities who get franchise fees, right, from the private companies. Sometimes they're 1.5 million, maybe some cities our size are 2 million. But remember, they get that as a transfer really from the electric utility, even though it's a franchise fee. They don't lift a pinky finger to get that money. This town goes through a lot of trouble and hassle and managing the electric utility. And to me, I think we should get more out of it. And if we're below the rate of neighboring towns, and we could still be below them, but raise up to that and be competitive, and yet have a lower mill levy, I'm for that transfer, because I've said it to many people. Having a lower electric rate is not getting people to move here, but a higher mill levy is getting people to move away.
It'll get businesses to move here and employ people.
Hasn't yet.
You don't know that.
Well, compared to, I'll just say a lot of people move to town here and work here, and they don't choose not to live here. So I want to give them an incentive on their property tax to.
I'm with you on that.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions, commissioners? We of course, we want to, next meeting, bring that recommendation to you for decision. So questions in the meantime, other data you want to see, please reach out.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Weiner.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
And
Thanks, Jill.
UFS. Jill at UFS.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And please, as Ben said, if there's anything you'd like to have a conversation about, please let us know. I'd be happy to try and get you any more information you want. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jill. Can hang up on you now.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Okay. Any other comments before we move on? Okay, so then we're going to move to Resolution R-25-22, a resolution to authorize a proposal with Mueller Construction for tree removal at North Park. Director of Parks, Jared Powers, will make comments. Hey, Jared.
Hello, Mayor and Commissioners. Here this evening to ask for you to approve a proposal from Muller's Construction for North Park. Right now, North Park is under construction, and there's a large area of trees and a small shelter in there that needs to be removed, some grading, some ditching, and reseeding. And our personnel does not have the manpower equipment to do this job, so I'm here tonight to ask you to approve Muller's Construction to remove this trees and the drainage and seeding.
Just one question for you. Could the company that we contract with to cut trees back from our power lines not do this as part of their contract?
That would be a Chris question.
Well,
Isn't there more to
this
it
is,
than that?
it's really, it's dirt work is what we're talking about.
Okay, never
And
mind.
so you're bulldozing
Yeah.
trees
Yeah.
over
I know they
versus
don't do
cutting them
dirt
down.
work.
If you can look, there should be a proposal in your packet.
Yeah.
Muller's also, this is a not to exceed cost, and if they can do it cheaper, they will pass that on to
Oh, they're
us.
bulldozing the trees all the way down.
They're gonna remove all the roots, and they got some drainage work to do there as well.
Okay.
And then it'll be turned, they're gonna seed it and it'll be turned into soccer fields.
So does that take everything from the park to the church, open it up?
No, it's in the northwest corner
Okay.
over to Grant Street.
Oh, okay, but it's not all the way back?
No.
Okay,
Just, there's an alleyway that goes in behind the
Oh,
the
okay.
park there, and it's that area there.
okay, all right, thank you.
I will move to approve Resolution R-25-22 as presented.
I'll second.
Motion is made by Vice Mayor Van Oster, seconded by Mayor Maples to approve Resolution R-25-22 as presented. Commissioner Edwards.
Aye.
Commissioner Hendricks.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Van Oster.
Aye.
Commissioner Faulkner.
Aye.
Mayor Maples.
Aye. Thank you. Now, Resolution R-25-23, a resolution to authorize the submission of a KDOT cost share grant application for reconstruction of hangar approaches at the Coffeyville Municipal Airport. Director of Parks, Jared Powers, will make comments.
Mayor and Commissioners, here tonight to ask you to allow us to apply for a cost share grant with KDOT to reconstruct hangar approaches. This is an 85-15 grant. However, Amber Dean says we need to do 84-16. 1 more % will get us more points for them to give us a better opportunity.
Okay.
One hangar approach is 42 years old and the other one is 83. The one that's 83 is basically turned into gravel and jets and turboprops. We had a turboprop move out of that hangar because of that reason and move into another one. So, if you look at your packet, there's engineer's opinion of probable cost. The match was really high with the engineer's cost, so the engineer that we use said they would supply us with the stuff we need for free. So this lowered our match way down.
Awesome.
Okay, great.
Good.
That's wonderful.
Good.
What about the interior floor of the hangars?
The interior floor of the hangars are pretty good.
Okay.
This is the large hangars, not the T hangars.
Okay.
Move to
Tammy?
approve Resolution R-25-23 as presented.
Second.
Motion is made by Commissioner Edwards, seconded by Vice Mayor Van Oster to approve Resolution R-25-23 as presented. Commissioner Hendricks.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Van Oster.
Aye.
Commissioner Faulkner.
Aye.
Mayor Maples.
Aye.
Commissioner Edwards.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jared.
Okay, now we move on to Resolution R-25-24, a resolution to establish a solid waste collection and disposal rates for residential trash customers. Director of Finance, Martin Cummings, will make comments. Hello.
Hey, good evening, Commissioners. As stated, as you all are aware, we recently approved a 10-year contract with Waste Connect. Sorry, I'm going to say their name
Waste
wrong.
Connections.
You got it. Anyway, because of the nature of the agreement that we had with them, our initial 3 years is a fixed price locked in. And at the rate that they had proposed to us that we agreed to, we are able to maintain our 2024 trash collection rates for residential and commercial customers for the next, or I should say residential, not commercial, but residential, we don't do that. It's just for the residential. For our residential customers, and so as of right now, the regular rate is $15.30. And for an additional polycart, the senior rate is $14.30, and the additional polycart is an incremental $8.13. And so we are simply recommending that we adopt the 2024 rates for the next 3 years, and then at which point we would come and present recommendations at that time for any changes that may be necessary.
What vehicle will you use to identify the senior rate?
Say that again?
Senior rate?
Oh, yeah.
How will you identify who is and isn't a senior?
62, I believe, is the, yeah.
Qualified, Jim, don't worry.
No, I mean,
I'm trying to be delicate here.
if I move into town, and I'm a new resident, how are you going to verify that I'm meet the 62?
If you're a new resident, any new resident has to come in and fill out an application for their new utility account, at which point we would be able to establish your age at the time of initial service.
Yeah, the driver's.
Just show a driver's license.
Driver's license usually is how we would accomplish that.
Our second option was to ask them to do jumping jacks, but we didn't think that would work. So.
Now,
All right.
I will say, it brings up a point that, say you're a new resident in town and you call the city utility office and you go, I'm a new resident in town, I need trash service and water service. Nobody says anything about age. Do our people here ask the question, are you a senior or not? They wouldn't know to ask.
Honestly, that's a really good point, and that's something I can bring up with our new utility manager and making sure that utility billing manager and making sure that we are delicately yet specifically inquiring once they set up new service.
And just a recommendation too, we need to repeatedly tell citizens to put those old blue poly trash cans out on the street on Thursday, April 3rd.
Yes, that's
Because
it's not. No, that's not right. It's
No.
so that's not right.
I think she's going to go over everything in her later.
Okay, all
Yeah,
right.
she'll be
Yeah.
doing
She's
it.
got it under control.
You got it under
Yeah.
control, all right. 'Cause I believe that's what
not
was in the
No,
paper
no,
tonight.
No.
Melissa's
wrong.
like, oh,
Well,
God,
then it
don't
was
mess this up.
Okay.
Right, no, because I remember my notes this morning that I read off on the radio.
Yeah, you did not say that.
No, I was. But that is a good point. We do want to make sure that citizens are aware that they need to routinely be aware that they need to come and update their information with the city.
Yep.
You have a change in billing address, a change in email, contact information, whatever it may be. Obviously, our ability to reach out, communicate, and understand what's going on with individual residents is finite, so we rely on the residents to come in and proactively bring that information to us. And while periodically we do plan going forward to make pushes for that, there's just only so much we can do from City Hall.
And those of us who end up aging out of regular rates.
Fair point. So to anybody listening that knows they're going to be aging out and they'd like to get a discount on their trash service, please let us know at City Hall and we will be happy to adjust your rates.
Commissioner, I think we'll just go ahead too, and since we're talking trash, allow Melissa to go over to bulk.
That's my line. He stole that. Just to say it.
Yes, okay.
Okay, so yes, as you guys are all aware, we will be switching to Waste Connections as of April 1st. Republic Services will continue to pick up bulk and trash through Monday, March 31st. So yeah, beginning April 4th, all residential trash will be picked up on Fridays. So the whole town for residential customers in the city limits, trash pickup day will be Friday. So be sure to set your trash out by Friday morning for collection. Waste Connection will start delivering the new trash carts to residential homes starting Monday, March 17th. So next Monday through March 28th, they're going to be working 6 days a week to make sure that everybody has their poly carts. If residents pay for more than one poly cart, They have that information, so if they have 2 or 3, the same amount that they have will be set by Waste Connection. Like I said, Republic Service will make their final pickup on Monday, March 31st. Republic Service will begin removing old carts starting Tuesday, March 25th. So they are starting, that Tuesday, March 25th is going to be the last day for Republic Services for Tuesday trash days. So everybody just needs to leave their poly cart out after the trash has been picked up. Make sure it's left out until it gets picked up by Republic. Hopefully they'll be pretty quick in doing that, but they may not get all of them picked up in a day. Just leave them out until they are picked up. Let's see. And I guess that also brings us to the question of the bulk item pickup. Waste Connections has given us a few different options for bulk pickup. First option would run kind of like we run it now. They would divide the city into 4 different quadrants. They would run the entire route every Friday. 4 Fridays of the month, they would run the entire route for that quadrant. Second option, they would break the town into 2 quadrants, and then residents would call to schedule a bulk pickup. Since there would be doing half the town as opposed to a quarter, they would want residents to call. Reason that they are doing that option is they were in attendance when we were talking about trash service after our bid opening, and they know the commission's and the citizens' concern for the heavy trucks on the streets. By doing this, it would hopefully alleviate some of that by just going to the houses that make the call. Also to note, with Waste Connection, there will be a number to call. There will be 2 operators that are completely familiar with our account, our addresses, and our contract. You will no longer be calling a 1-800 number and getting a corporation out of state that doesn't have our contracts. So that is one thing. I know there's been some issues in the past of calling services and not getting a direct answer. With Waste Connection, that's not going to be an issue. Third option is going to be 1 day a month for a Saturday pickup. What they will do, I should say Saturday drop-off, they would come and set up probably at the lot at First and Union, that city lot we have there, or the old Walmart parking lot. They would find a place to set up. Residents could also call and schedule a pickup that Saturday too. So they would come, pick up anybody that called, and then be there for anyone that wants to drop items off. Again, that is just a different option to save wear and tear on our streets. So kind of a decision we need to make sooner rather than later, as this is, we need to, if we're breaking up into quadrants, to get that information out. So we were interested to get your feedback on that.
Well, my question was, so I guess my first thought was not option 3.
Right.
For the reason that you have a lot of people that would not have the ability to take trash to a drop-off point.
Sure.
But they could call.
Yes.
And somebody would come pick it up on
Yes.
that day.
Yep, they
So
would
that would
come early.
alleviate that issue.
Sure. Sure,
Okay,
yeah.
because that was
And
my
they're
big concern
thinking-
about option 3.
And I think on option 3, they would still get the, pickup if they call. But I think they're thinking, that there are people that would come and bring
And
more.
bring their stuff.
Yes,
Right.
to bring their
We'd
stuff
have,
to
they'd
that,
have
but
both
yes.
options, and it would have that fewer trucks on the streets.
Exactly.
Okay.
One
That's a
thing
good
to
point.
note about that third option, and I've been racking my brain trying to think of negatives for each of these, there is still a limit, and it is
4 items.
4 items. So resident doesn't understand that brings 5 and they're frustrated. I think they would work with them.
They will.
I just, want to be aware that there is a limit. This is not free-for-all drop-off, including checking ID for
Right, and they would
address.
just have, a driver's license with City of Coffeyville address or a utility bill. They would have plenty on staff there Saturday to help people unload and get the stuff into the dumpsters as well. Again, these were just some different options that they came up with, knowing, your concerns and, the residents' concerned with the wear and tear on our streets. They are more than happy to do it the way it's been running with the 4 quadrants, and they run the entire route, 4 Fridays a month.
And they're open to changing if something
They are.
doesn't work.
All right.
Okay,
Yeah.
so they do the whole thing every Friday, right?
So we would break up into 4 quadrants.
Okay.
And so the first Friday, quadrant 1,
Okay.
they would run the entire route.
Right.
Residents wouldn't have to call, and they would pick up. Second Friday of the month, they would pick up quadrant 2. Same thing, run the entire route, pick up anything
So
that's
just
out.
like what we're used
Just
to
like
now.
we have now. We will just have to, I doubt they would break the quadrants up too much different than what we have the trash days are as of now. So that'll be, a trial and error of what
Sure.
quadrant everyone's in to
Sure.
get things picked up.
Okay.
But
So if we did go with option 1, I didn't see it in the write-up that you provided, but if we went with 1, does that preclude making a special call to come pick up, or is just your Friday is your Friday and that's it?
Yep. Your Friday, just like it runs now. You don't have to call if it's your regular bulk item day. So if quadrant 1 is the first Friday of the month, they're going to run that entire quadrant that day and pick anything up. Residents do not need to call.
But the question is, would I be able to call
For an
and-
extra
for a special
pickup?
pickup?
I believe so.
All right. So essentially, option 1 sounds like no change.
Yeah, option 1, the only change would be just what the quadrants are and getting that information to the public to know what day.
Fewer trucks to run on the streets to try to save the streets, then we'd go with option 2
Option
and they
3.
call.
And they would
then
call.
they just pinpoint go instead of running
Right.
the whole town.
Right.
Or option 3, and they wouldn't
Yes.
wouldn't go in the streets at all unless you called and said, come get it.
Right.
And that would be once a month.
Yeah, once
Correct.
a month, one Saturday. Also with the option that you could
Call.
come and
You
drop
could call
things
and
off,
have
too.
somebody pick them up that day.
Right, yes, because they would come and do the pickups and then,
And then that would, that
They're
would
just
keep
going where they
trucks
need to go.
on the streets one day a month,
Yeah.
not one day 4 times a
Right.
month.
And just going where they need to go.
Right,
not
exactly.
every street.
Exactly.
Okay. Question. I don't know how you're gonna make this communication any clearer, but I have a feeling there is gonna be confusion.
There will
Because
be.
when they deliver Waste Connection bins before Republic
yes.
picks up their last bit, somebody's gonna put trash in, then
It's going
the
to
Waste
happen.
Connection bin and put it out the street, and they're gonna
And
be
Rep-
like, well,
and
I just
Republic
got
won't
it, why
pick it
am I
up.
using it? So
Yeah.
they need to be clear, like, do not use the
Yes.
new Waste Connections till April 1st.
Yeah. Well, April 4th will be the first
day.
the first pickup, but yes, to use it. Yes.
You can only do so much.
Right, and we
And
do have,
it's there.
hopefully after the decision on bulk is made, I do have a media release prepared to send to the Montgomery County Chronicle, the Coffeyville Journal. We'll have it on the front page of our website. Contact KGGF about, blasting that information out as well. So we're going to try to reach as many mediums as we can to get that information out there. Of course, with switching a service like this, I mean, there's going to be hiccups, but
Yeah.
we'll get through them.
That's all right.
And Dawn
That's
can
right.
put it on Facebook and then.
So, and I don't necessarily need a decision right now tonight, but if you
Yes.
guys would reach out to me soon, tomorrow morning.
I'd prefer a decision
Tonight?
tonight, since
Yeah.
you're all in
You
the
know,
room.
I'm thinking, my first thought was that third option's not gonna work.
I was
Because-
the same.
And then as I'm thinking about it, that actually sounds like a better option to save our streets. If people can call and say, come pick up my stuff.
Right. And again, they're not calling a 1-800 number.
Right,
They're
they're gonna
calling,
call and talk to
yes,
somebody that
is
knows us as a
familiar, has
city.
all of our addresses, has our
I'm
contract.
liking that
That's a
option.
30-second phone call, easy.
Yes.
It is.
Oh, yeah.
No menu.
I'm saying option 3.
I like option 3.
And now, they
And
did
we can
say,
change.
yes, and
Okay.
I did talk to him
Yeah.
yesterday, he said, you know what, we can try it out. If it doesn't work, people aren't getting bulk disposed of in a proper manner, we can change at any time. They're very flexible, which is why they gave us the options in the first place, because they want something that suits us and the residents and our streets, so they're trying to appease, what our wishes are. So they are open to all three of those.
I'm just going to say my opinion.
Please do.
Your opinions matter, but I think option 2. I'm just worried that option 3 has enough variable for things to mess up, and now, to your point of communicating, everybody knows that it's a Saturday, but we're switching, and so that one just makes me a little bit nervous. I do think it meets some of our other goals.
What was option 2 again?
Option
Twice a
two,
month.
Twice.
yeah, 2 quadrants, and they have to call.
It's still a call.
And they
It's
have
still
to
a call,
It's still a call.
It's not bad.
and it's 2 days a month.
I just like the idea of the streets, being off the streets.
I will say one other thing to caveat this, and we have not implemented this, but our current, what do we call it, bulk, where we send out the 15 bins throughout the year.
Oh, neighborhood dumpster program.
Our neighborhood dumpster program is not working. We're having people call, we deliver it, they all forget, they don't use it. And so one of the things that Matt proposed after going and looking at some other cities was essentially doing this Saturday thing, which is coming up with our 15 bins that we maximum, and picking a one day a month where people can come and just, and not having it, limited to just 4 items. It's on our list to propose to commission. We're not there yet, but that option may be coming.
So would that be in addition to the bulky pickup that's
If we pick 3, that would be in addition to where it'd be,
So, but if we
it'd be a
did-
day where we can get a lot of stuff gone.
But if we
versus-
did 2, if we did option 2, and you had a Saturday pickup that was run by the city, that would be 2 separate options that people would have to dispose of their
So
waste.
it'd be like how we did the fall and the spring
Cleanup.
cleanup. We had dumpsters up there at First and Union.
Okay, you've done it
And-
before.
Yeah, we've done it before and it worked well.
Yeah, there is still the matter of, can people get the
Yes.
trash there? For both scenarios, that, may be difficult, but
But calling a real person changes a lot of things.
It really does.
very happy about that.
Yes.
I'm okay with trying option 2 and
Yeah.
let's see how it goes.
Yeah. We can try it and see if it doesn't work, we change it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because, yeah.
Consensus?
2.
2?
You had me at no price increase. You all do what you want on this.
Now, I do want to remind everybody that that is not a part of the resolution that I brought to the table, so we just make sure we do.
No.
But you don't know how many times I've had people already say, what about bulky pickup? What about bulky pickup?
And
Yeah.
it's,
So that's very important to the city of Coffeyville.
No, absolutely.
okay.
Yeah.
So let's try option 2
Try option
and see
2.
how it goes. And with the
Great.
calling, that's the
Yes.
only thing I'm not,
Gotta let them know
but,
that those.
Yeah.
and I'm sure there's a deadline they have to call by. They can't call
Right, and we'll...
Friday afternoon at 4:30 and.
Right, yeah. And I will establish that when I talk
Okay.
to Waste Connection tomorrow, that this is the option we've chosen, and get the more specifics of, the deadline that they have to call for the pickup. And then I think too, the 2 quadrants, basically splitting the town in half is gonna
Okay.
be much easier than the 4 to start with. And if it doesn't work, we can always
Yep.
go
And
back
giving
to
them
option 1.
Time, like you said, to work through all of this.
Yes, yeah.
I mean, you would think it'd be very simple, but,
It's a process, it'll be a process,
it is.
but...
Just getting
Yeah.
used to it. So, okay on that. Now back to
Thank you.
your deal. Okay,
Sorry,
I
Marty.
will make.
No, that's okay. I'm glad we got it all out at once.
Okay, I will make a motion to move to approve Resolution R-25-24 as presented.
I'll second.
There.
Motion is made by Vice Mayor Van Oster, second by Mayor Maples, to approve Resolution R-25-24 as presented. Commissioner Hendricks.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Van Oster.
Aye.
Mayor Maples.
Aye.
Commissioner Edwards.
Aye.
And I will get Commissioner Faulkner's vote
Yeah.
when he comes back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, moving on. Now enough trash talk. Resolution R-25-25, a resolution to authorize the issuance of a purchase order to Advanced Steel Incorporated to provide structural steel for the City of Coffeyville Electric Utility. Director of Electric Services, Chris Weiner, will make comments.
Good evening again. Appreciate the opportunity to visit with you about this. Just wanted to get this approved for our B substation project. It's the project that we are replacing the existing CR and F transformers, the 75 MVA transformers with 125 MVA transformers. This is for the structural steel on the actual project. The engineer's estimate was a little bit less than half of this, so this is a 107% increase over what the engineer's estimate was. So it's definitely a lot more expensive than what we'd anticipated. unfortunately. Thankfully, this is something that, as far as the city's concerned, our residents, the CRNF is going to reimburse the city for the cost of this steel, but it's still something that, neither us nor CRNF, want to have to pay for, these crazy cost increases, but the cost of steel has gone up substantially. We were talking about, hey, is there an opportunity that it could come down? I'm talking with Robbie Collins, the plant manager there, but I don't, my concern is that I don't think it is likely that it will come down. My concern is that it might actually go the other direction and that it goes up. The steel is coming from Oklahoma, is the low bidder. I should say the lowest qualified bidder. There was one lower bidder, but they did not bid the entire project, did not bid all the steel. So this is the lowest qualified bidder, and like I said, they're out of Oklahoma. So I don't think that, in terms of, we're talking about tariffs and whatnot, that any tariffs would have directly impacted their bid, hopefully, but, there could have been another supplier, from Canada or Mexico or someplace else that may have been that may have been lower than what this bidder is, but, looking at the potential for tariffs or something that they may, at this point, be higher. So in that case, this bidder is the recommended option. So we're looking for approval to move forward with the project. Mr. Collins as well as Mr. Pytosh have both agreed that yes, they're comfortable with moving forward with this, even though the cost is coming in well over expectations. The engineer, we have asked for an updated cost estimate to see. Hopefully, we can at least be prepared for any further suspected increases in cost based on what the new dynamic is in the market at the moment compared to what it was. I think that estimate was done late 23. So we're just seeing cost increases. You wouldn't expect it to go up double in a year, but that's what we're seeing. So just speaks to the cost of what we do. So.
Right. Okay. Well, if there's no questions, I will move to approve Resolution R-25-25 as presented.
Second?
Motion is made by Vice Mayor Van Oster, seconded by Commissioner Edwards to approve Resolution R-25-25 as presented. Vice Mayor Van Oster.
Aye.
Commissioner Faulkner.
Aye.
Mayor Maples.
Aye.
Commissioner Edwards.
Aye.
Commissioner Hendricks.
Aye.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Chris. Okay, now we will have a discussion on the Coffeyville Parks Plan. City Manager Ben Brubaker, I can't talk anymore, will make a presentation.
Thank you. This could have been just as easy in the city manager report, but I wanted to have the attachments in there. Based on conversations from the last commission meeting, we were in the process of making adjustments and working through our parks plan, and so I wanted to come and just report back. Met with the Parks Advisory Board. The feedback that I'm getting from that board, it was very positive, and they are looking forward to the changes that we're talking about making. The slides that you're getting are essentially a presentation that I gave to them, and so I'll quickly go through those. Please stop me if you have questions, otherwise I'll try to keep it quick. That first slide in your packet, just explaining the last 9 months, of course, the creation of our new Parks Department, staffing and equipment purchases that we've been doing, and through our amendments, of course, our 25 budget did not really include parks. It didn't exist yet, and so preparing that 25 budget for those additional departments. 25, rest assured with them immediately, we are going to complete Sycamore Park and North Park in 25. Sycamore Park was a 23 park project that is not complete. It's about, I think it was 81% from a funding complete. It just needs the parking lot though. And then North Park has not been complete. That still has a ways to go. We discussed with them the kind of the realignment of the advisory board and staff, and then developed in some improvements to both budgeting and implementation of that parks plan so that we move forward. First thing we did is we went over roles and responsibility, what an advisory board, what a city staff. That was one of the things that board asked us that they felt they were confused on. And so we got very specific. The advisory board is to advise the decision makers, which are each of you here in this room, with that staff support. And so that's really the meat of that. Public meeting format, the board per ordinance is open to the public and should act that way. And
it's been very, a little bit more low-key, and so we're changing that. We're going to follow just like we're doing with the Planning Commission. They're going to come, they're going to sit up here, they'll have their name tags, staff will be on this side, and we will treat those meetings as they were intended to, as a public meeting. So that means one of the changes there is that staff brings the agenda, just like we do in this meeting, and then, of course, there's comment section that those board members can have and other items they can bring up. From a planning perspective, we talked about the budget year versus our build year. Looking at the 25 budget and trying to figure out how are we budgeting for. So in 23, they said, oh, you know what, it'll be 200,000, let's go build a park, and had spent 183,000 or portions of that 183,000 before they even knew, staff, before we even knew really what we had taken in from sales tax. And so the switching of that is we're going to have a budget year, which means we will get to the end of the third quarter in a year. We'll be able to project fourth quarter what we expect sales tax revenue to be, and then we can make the plan for the park immediately. So we'll go out for bids, we'll get those quotes, we'll bring those back for approval. That would include, again, coming to commission and saying, this has been the advisory board's plan, here's what they'd like to do. Put that into place. Once approved by commission, as soon as we can, we would build that the following year and then go through that process again. So what you're going to see is from the plan originally submitted was 10 years of sales tax matching the 10 years of parks getting done. This is offsetting that by 1 year. That shouldn't worry anybody in the public that something may not then get done. The funds will still be there from the sales tax and still only allotted to that additional park. And so with Sycamore and North Park getting done in 25, towards the end of 25, we'll go through this process for that third park and bring that to commission, building it early in 26 and moving forward that way. From a budget perspective, so when they initially got together, they were expecting about $320,000 in sales tax. That was broken down, as you see, $100,000 to go to general operations and maintenance, $27.5 thousand for light improvements, and then $192,000 for park enhancements each year. And then they've budgeted higher and lower than that with carryover money expected for each park. Sales tax was implemented in 22. We did earn about $34,000 in sales tax in 22, which also then carried over. But you'll see that total sales tax there from 22 to 24 was $879,000. Roughly. The park expense so far in 23 and 24 was $251,000. So the remaining budget today, where we sit today, general operations hadn't been accounted for, we'll say. I think money has been spent, but essentially there's $200,000 into the general operations. Light improvements, $55,000, and park enhancements remaining is $373,000. So we are making more in property tax than expected, and that will help, especially since Sycamore hit its budget, and we hadn't done the parking lot yet, which could be up to $70,000. But
Concrete, not gravel, right?
no gravel parking lots,
Okay.
no. And
Well,
going
you
out
build-
for quotes, we're not going to do
You build
those.
metal buildings, I mean, it would stand to reason.
Touche. Contractor costs, kind of this maintenance versus construction. So
Gotta be classy.
maintenance is the ongoing upkeep, the repairs, and light improvements. Construction is new builds or major renovations. There was some dependency upon city staff to go and do the major construction, like we're talking about with North Park, which we're not staffed or equipment to do the job well enough. That was one of the concerns that the board had. You know, oh no, we've budgeted out, now we have to budget contractors, like the one we got approved today. But as we've seen so far, the pattern over 3 years is that we are bringing in more sales tax than expected. The other thing that wasn't accounted for this, and Marty's magic in Excel and showing, you know, inflation costs that we weren't really accounting for. So we're budgeting this much closer than ever before, and that will be included in their packets as we will come and present them with budgets so they can see where we're at. They don't manage that budget. That is staff in conjunction with approval from commission. The parks maintenance and line improvement, of course, that's going to be year-round management from staff, something that we had done from public service. Now with an actual department called Parks, you'll see that a little bit differently, including those seasonal improvements. One commissioner brought up that didn't understand this slide, the expanded parks definition, so I should have done a better job at communicating that. What I mean by this is not that necessarily the sales tax, the board's going to come in and recommend money to go in other places, but today we have a parks department, and these are the main areas underneath that parks department that we're including. Yes, the right-of-way and levy is not necessarily a park, but under that department. The last slide on there, you'll see the last two slides is just advisory board and staff roles that we went over in a little bit more detail. That's all for that report. Any questions, commissioners, on sales tax?
I think that people really love these parks. I think that's really had some positive feedback, so I'm glad we're doing this. Thank you. City manager's report.
Excellent. Several things to go through here. I do just received this today, so I wasn't able to put it in your packet, but I just wanted to show it to you as part of some of my updates. Look at it, pass it down. This is a current yard cleanup packet that code enforcement is working on, just to show you examples of the things that are out, that we're out looking at. And I'll reference some code enforcement here in a minute. Some interesting things that happened. So last Friday, I received a call from a contractor in town who is going to build a house. And I knew the contractor was here. I knew they had bought a lot of properties, had not heard that they were going to go build. They found a similar kit to the houses that we've done from another company, and they had all their materials delivered. And within 10 hours, the majority of it was taken. It was gone. Thank goodness, Diligent PD were on that very quickly, and by Saturday, it had all been returned to that contractor, and we have someone in custody investigating that.
Wow.
When I got that call, and it was late Friday, and I didn't get it till Saturday, my stomach just dropped. Here's someone that wants to build a home, brought all the material, and it was gone within 10 hours.
Wow.
So just a huge shout out to those at our police department for being on top of that. Great work between officers and detectives there, our chief of police said, so very happy. They're going to move forward with, as Quinn actually said, hopefully that one bad actor did not sway them from what this community is and what it can be. Very, very excited that they are building. Also immediately told them about some of our incentive packages, and we're engaging with them.
Good Lord.
Yeah. Our second house is complete as of today. We're going to go through, do some cleaning, and we will have, in the next week and a half or so, an open house for realtors to go through to help us get that word out. We have had people that have been watching it. We're hopeful that we can get that sold here as quickly as we did the first home. We had a conversation last meeting about our out-of-state plates. After speaking with Quinn,
I wasn't going to bring this up.
yeah, this is me. I'm bringing it up. Speaking to Quinn after that meeting, he felt that if we really wanted to, within traffic stops, take a more aggressive approach, we should make some changes to an ordinance. And so Quinn and I have talked, Paul and I have talked. Paul is working on that, and we will bring that back for ultimate decision from all commissioners on whether or not to implement that language through an ordinance. Code enforcement, several things to hit. I gave you the example packet that is out currently. Walnut, about 30 days ago, code enforcement, we might be approaching more like 40 days ago, code enforcement was working on Walnut Street. We are in that 30 to 40 day window, and so we now go back out to follow up and to see what action is being taken. We have seen action being taken for yard cleanup and some of the blight down there. That time frame was right when we were getting some snow too. We didn't expect anything major, but we did ask them to, make sure it was happening. Right along with that, we of course looked at city property. We talked to you about the vacant lot on the corner of Walnut and 11th Street. We went out to businesses, asked those businesses not to park there. gave them a 30-day notice. Initially, the reactions were, thanks for telling us. Now those reactions are quite different. That lot has been vacant for a long time, and people have used it and depended on it as a parking lot, especially the Salvation Army right now. Initially, when we went and talked to them, months before we went and talked to them, we had community members complaining about that lot. We had community members recommending we do something unique with that lot. The egress, the in and out right off of both those main thoroughfares is very difficult to do anything, and so we've expanded, looking at the same type of doing something somewhere else. That lot, I have asked Public Works to quote that out. If we can do the parking lot for Sycamore, for North Park, and this lot, maybe we can see some reduction in cost there. So you will see that if you're hearing from the public. At this point, the option is to go and make it a parking lot. I think we want to look at that and what the rules we'd have. We don't want some really overnight parking lot we want to still not make it we want it to look nice.
Yes.
That's a main area.
I heard that before.
Yeah. You heard it before, but you're seeing action today.
Glad to see you're
so,
catching up.
Yeah. It's taken me 9 months, but I'm getting there.
You'll get there.
Yeah. Well, I just want to say that's good. I know Salvation Army Auxiliary, or the volunteer ladies, were worried.
Yeah.
Because they use it a lot in the months of like November, especially in December.
Yeah.
People come and, yeah. So thanks for working that out.
Next item under code enforcement, just wanted to say some numbers out loud where we're at today and how we're moving forward. So we know commissioners have talked about parking in the yard. This year, so far, so 2.5 months, we're at 14 citations. This is all, the majority of these are due diligence of police officers, not folks reporting in. Just to give numbers, in 24 there was a total of 33 citations. In 23 there was 41 citations. In 22 there was 43 citations. So 2.5 months in, we're at 14. We are making switches also to an ordinance that Paul is working on to move our animal control under code enforcement. And so then we'll have 3 staff within that department, and we're hopeful that code enforcement can support, on the lookout for animal things. We can also support some of the, code violations, since those people are out all the time, that traditionally PD has looked at. Part of that would be an ordinance that had already been passed I believe several years ago, that allowed code enforcement to go and give notices to appear in court. So we're pulling back, looking at that ordinance and applying that as well as we move forward on these code enforcement things. Reminder, part of this change is to not be so aggressive on grass in code enforcement. So the model that we're looking at right now, and this is going to be a test. Matt believes he tested it similar to this a year before and got some major negative feedback from the community. So we're going to test this, but I will say that as I went out and met community members when I first got here, the letters from the city about mowing or grass, a lot of people did not appreciate those. And that's because of the time frame. We go out, they write down 60 addresses, you go back in, you type it into the computer system, it gets mailed the next day, goes up to Wichita, it comes back, it's now been over a week. The majority of people go and mow their grass. And so these tiers that we're trying to do are, code enforcement knows, right? They go by every single property all the time. So they know those who are regularly mowing. And there's this yellow tier that, maybe they've kind of sloughed off even though they know, and the letter convinced them to mow before. And then there's that red tier, which is we're usually going out there and charging them because we're mowing it regularly. So we're trying to break that into tiers, trying to decrease the negative letters, especially for those people who are actively taking care of their yards.
Good.
Hopefully that will also give us some more time to spend that effort on other code enforcement areas in town.
Can you refresh my memory? How much do we charge people when we mow their yard for an average lot?
I would be speaking out of turn. I know that the fees are high, and so those are for evaluation.
It's $100.
Yeah, it's like a $25 to $35 to actually that we pay the contractor. Then there's the, Mark Hall and put some administrative costs in there for staff to,
Well, you have to.
because it is, when I say,
It's
now,
your time.
you just approved some technology that we're hoping also helps us lower the time, but, we were on paper writing all of this down, typing it all in.
Yep.
So there was some expended time. We will absolutely look at those fees as we are creating efficiencies with technology so we can decrease that. I will say one of the things that they've, pushed with our contractors that go out and mow, they are allowed to say, hey, look, rather than taking the $100 fee, how about you pay me the 25, 35, whatever it is, and have me come back, and I'll start mowing it for you. Because their one-time fee could be, so a few months, several months of this person's fee. So trying to encourage them to,
Okay.
hey, here's someone that would be happy to come out and mow for you and pay them. It's going to be a lot less than
Could
city
we,
fees.
could we empower our inspectors to, depending on the circumstance surrounding why a yard might not have gotten mowed, could we empower them to offer to have the city mower come and mow it for just the $25? I'm thinking of circumstances where, you've got a widow lady whose husband died since the last mowing season. He always used to mow the yard, and she just hasn't found somebody yet to mow her yard. Maybe we could get it mowed for her for $25 or whatever, instead of giving her a ticket and charging her $100. We've had people that have been in the hospital. I just want to try to find a way to institute a little bit of compassion into the system. Yeah, exactly.
I'm hopeful that's what the tier system's going to do.
Yeah.
The next step is letter before, so, you'll still then get a letter that something happened. So the people have plenty of time to find it.
I'm just
That
saying-
last step is letting them say, look, I can do this and we can avoid
Yeah.
the penalties. So I
I'm
think,
okay with there being some give in the system for compassion, to just not hammer a citizen or somebody who's had there's just a lot of reasons why people might not have mowed their yard,
I'm going to give
other than laziness.
yeah, and I'm going to give a major plug right now for code enforcement. That is a rough job.
It is.
Yes,
And
it is.
most people are frustrated or upset when they're there. I've been surprised at how many people know our code enforcement officers by name. I would say, I would say overall, there is a positive relationship there, that those tiers are almost replicate of each different category of issue we have. So they do a decent job of giving some of the grace you're talking about, and we will continue to do that. That's why we're doing the tier system.
Because I think in the
versus-
past, the mistake that I've made, is there's been too much hammer and not enough give in the system to be understanding of people that are having a bad circumstance.
Especially when you go by somebody's yard and they always keep it mowed. And you go by, that should be the first alert that there is something wrong.
Yeah.
And maybe we need to go to the door and knock on it and say,
Well, that's what I'm thinking, maybe they need to
Well-
be checked on.
I mean, I know that takes a little bit of time.
And I'm not, the time is not a worry as much as it is the employee safety.
Yeah.
Well,
Dogs that come through windows, people that get upset. So you're right. I don't disagree on the grace side, but we have 3,000 plus residents
No, I
with
know,
a variety
but
of
just-
different situations. I think that generally speaking, they know the areas where that kind of a relationship is fine.
Okay, that's
And those
what I-
that don't, I think
That's what
they're
I mean.
actively working in
if
that.
you know a little lady lives
Yeah.
there,
Yeah.
you should not be afraid to go to the door. And, like you said, maybe, is there something, can we help you? Here is a list of people we know that mow, or something like that.
Yeah, oh, they do that,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Or if they have a concern, call the police.
yeah, yeah.
Anyway,
Okay, Commissioner Van Oster pointed out that the sales tax report hadn't been in the commissions. You will see that that is in there.
Thank you so much.
Yes. You should see that once a month.
Okay.
And I'm going to go further with that because in our 25 budget amendments, we've been really trying to understand sales tax. And so as we move into 26, very quickly, we're going to start talking about that. We are making changes to our GL codes. This will be one of them. The ins and outs of intermingled funds has been very difficult to unwind. And so we're going to really clean that up here for the 26 budget. So it's very specific on sales tax money in and what it goes out for, and no other intermingled funds in there. So actively working on that. I think we had 2 meetings in the last month just talking about that, and Marty's had several with our consultants, Baker Tilly, going over how do we change our GL reports to be more transparent to the community and commission.
And before we start patting ourselves too much on the back on these future, for the next couple of months sales tax reports, we just need to remember we've got turnaround going on.
Hey, it all counts. It's no money in the
Exactly, it's still
everything.
sales tax.
It's all money in the till.
Come on in.
Yeah, come on in. No, but, yeah.
So speaking of budgets, so I will send out an email to try to coordinate what I'd like to see, if at all possible, and I know everybody's got a different schedule in springtime, so we'll work through this, but it would be great if within about the first week of April, we can come and have a work session to start reviewing 25 budget amendments. And you're all expecting that because of the way we passed. And so hopefully by the end of April, we're passing that amendment and we don't have to look at that till the end of the year. And we might need a second meeting depending on how that goes. The last week in April or first week in May, I've heard from 3 of you now about goals and aligning those goals to 26. I don't know exactly how you've all experienced that in your different times on commission. I've got a lot of city managers giving me a lot of great advice. So I'd love to be able to come in and, based on a resolution, set priorities from the commission, really priorities for me. And if that's something interested in, we can come back and report on that quarterly on where we're at with those goals. That goes back to my performance review just a few months ago. I want to make sure that we've, by resolution, outlined those on the things you're expecting to see work in progress on. So that would kind of set the stage for us to go and start working on the 26 budget if we've kind of gone through some of those priorities. So I will send out emails and try to coordinate some of those dates here in the next month and a half, 2 months. So community development updates. Our community development director found a mural grant. We've applied for that grant. We're hopeful. We're in conversations. I'm in conversations with Union Pacific Railroad. We would love to get both bridges on 12th and 11th, so that's 4 painted and just looking nice. That's an in and out right there. So we're hopeful they'll let us do that. A lot of other communities have that. So we're talking to them about that and hopeful that we can get, again, back to beautification of our community. Tennis courts. First to second week in April is what it's looking like right now. I say it every time, depending on weather. We're scheduling a pre-construction meeting right now with some of the changes we've been discussing. Fairgrounds, you've heard either individually as we've talked or a few times in the meeting, that this idea I have with fairgrounds. I've engaged with an engineer. I've already met with the engineer, but the first meeting with the engineer and representatives from the Fair Board and I are meeting this week on Thursday to start looking at pictures and kind of putting all of that into paper so we can start bringing to commissioners and have conversations on how we fund that, and is this an idea that is acceptable to the commission. So that is happening. Our downtown grants, that deadline is just a few days away. We've had 7 property/business owners apply. Well, we have 6 grants to give away. So that's wrapping up here. We expect we might have another 2 applications come in here in the next few days. Chris or Kevin's here. So I got to be careful making some assumptions here, but we had an interesting meeting with Chanute Electric Department, and the report I got, I think we learned some things. Would you call it learned some things? Yes. So Chanute, we had an issue with the transformer, didn't exactly understand it. It was a similar issue that we've experienced in our CRNF transformers, and so decided to reach out to Chanute. So what do you do in this case? And it turns out that they had some equipment that could help us essentially open transformers while they're still in operation to check oil. Is that the skinny of it?
We could still sample oil at any time while around, but this was to actually filter the oil and recirculate it, and put filter the oil back into it. And
So-
refill transformers.
That does not sound like.
So they came down and they trained our staff on how to use this equipment. They then let us use the equipment for about a week. This was last week. And our staff went through, did we hit every transformer?
Everyone except for South Industrial Park, because it's feeding all of the industrial parks in Louisiana.
So the majority of our transformers, we went into all of them, and we put in a lot of oil. They needed, I think, a little bit more attention than maybe we were aware. We're talking hundreds of gallons of oil.
Wow.
Little, you know.
I think there's about 150 gallons.
Okay, 150 gallons of oil. So, you know, some education here that we're getting from them. They also got to go up and tour some of their plants. We talked about some preventive maintenance things that they're doing differently. So, very happy about that. I sent an email to Todd, the city manager, Chanute, just thanking him for his staff time, resources, equipment. We just really appreciate that. I think we got some good educational pieces back from Chanute.
nice.
So
That's
hopefully
good.
we
That's
can
very
keep
good.
that
I like that.
relationship real strong and support them as well.
Yes, yes.
Just from a historical perspective, an electric department staff could probably substantiate this, but back in the old days, an electrician wanted to see if what the condition was of the transformer oil. He doesn't do the plug, stick his finger in and taste it. And if it tasted burnt, it needed to be replaced. And that's how they did it. Family member
No
was
thanks.
part of that team, so I know that to be true.
Okay.
If you
We're-
ever smelled the burnt transformer, you wouldn't forget that smell.
Yeah,
Wartzilla engines.
yes.
I went, Commissioner Hendricks went out and toured and saw some of the issues. I went out and looked at it. I articulated my disgust with the situation that we have right now. We are going to be over on our, we budget for in case, right? We're going to be over that. And we're only really into the first engine, and we're already seeing broken springs in the others and the paint issues that are there. These things are not something that should happen. The tech out there, as we mentioned before, I think this is only the second time in like 25 years that he's seen this. So we have reached out to Wartzilla with our displeasure and what are you going to do about it? They're not in warranty. They really don't have to do anything. We're hopeful that they're going to step up and support us in this. But this is a serious problem that is probably cost and may cost in the future, further maintenance costs unexpected that shouldn't have happened. So just know that the team is on that. We're pushing on Wartzilla. It is causing delays in when we told GRDA and SPP when engines would be off. We're having to redo that. Of course, we don't want to break into these again soon thereafter. You kind of want to do it while they're open. So it's an issue. We're working on it. If any of you want to come and speak with the electric team or Chris or myself and get further details, please let us know. But we're actively, it's kind of an active project to figure out what to do there.
And if you want to take a look at them, come on out and stop out and show you how around the way.
Okay, thank you.
So took a tour of GRDA with Chris about 2 weeks ago, and I haven't heard back from staff yet. One of the things that I asked to be implemented and how positive or not positive it was. But it was interesting to note when we went out there that we wore a vest, they gave us gloves, they gave us eye protection, and they gave us a head cover there, hard hat. And
PPE.
we were even just driving around the plant. We
Yeah.
weren't really in the mix of that. It's not a practice we've really had out at our plants, and so we have implemented that. Obviously not for the break room areas and for the control rooms, but when staff go in, we are requiring, so we've got some costs to go and get that equipment. But although frustrating, and I can tell you, although never worked for electric utility, when I was in Iraq, I hated wearing that Kevlar helmet 24/7. But there's a good reason. We're trying to keep our staff and others that come there safe. So if you are hearing about that, we have implemented some of those policies. I think the rest can be paused. We're far in and still have an executive session, so I'll end with that.
Okay. Any comments from staff or commissioners?
Not right now.
Okay.
I do have one. We put in our packet a street sweeper schedules. Okay. We have the capability to do leaves also, don't we?
Yes.
Okay.
What do you mean?
Are we going to push them to the curb and
Oh,
pick
really?
up?
Push 'em
Yeah,
up,
because
yeah.
that
We
came
bought-
up.
Isn't that
we
a
bought a-
vacuum that's on it with an extra
That came
attachment?
with when we purchased it. I thought that was
Carpet
one of the
shows up.
Yeah, yeah.
things.
Yes, we purchased that with that. Yes.
Okay, that's what I thought. Are we going to,
Are we going to use it or keep it in the box? Yes, as
no,
far
I mean,
as,
like, put a schedule, I'm just
Yeah.
thinking here between, pretty soon have it, people be out clean, if they're not already, getting their yards spruced up or trying to clean up after the winter, and so I didn't know.
yes.
I knew
No,
I knew
maybe
who
so.
you were going to ask, that's why.
That's
So
a
I think
great
that's
answer.
part of this schedule as far as communicating to the public specifically
that's what I
on
mean.
leaves
Are we
going
gonna
out and a
be-
plan.
Okay, so pretty soon we will
Let me
be.
get back with further details of the plan.
That's all right.
What was your first of your plan?
Well, it just, you put this in there and it reminded me of that.
Well, you asked for a street sweeper plan, not a leaf sucker plan.
You rake them to the street.
You rake them to the
blow away.
street
and then a
and then the
vacuum
vacuum
vacuums
picks
them
them up. Yeah,
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty,
I think that's
that'd
a
be
great
good.
idea.
Help keep a lot of things clean.
People won't be used to that, but.
That's great.
That's all I have.
Okay, so we'll move on to an executive session to discuss matters deemed privileged and confidential in the attorney-client relationship. I move to recess to executive session for consultation with the city attorney regarding matters that would be deemed privileged in the attorney-client relationship as permitted by KSA 75-4319B2 to include the city manager and city attorney for a period of,
I'm going to say 9 o'clock.
Okay,
15
so 15 minutes.
and to reconvene in the commission room at 9 p.m.
Okay.
Second?
Go
Go
ahead. No, go ahead. Sorry.
Motion is made by Mayor Maples, seconded by Commissioner Edwards, to recess to executive session for consultation with the city attorney regarding matters that would be deemed privileged in the attorney-client relationship as permitted by KSA 75-4319B2 to include the city manager and city attorney for a period of 15 minutes to reconvene in the commission room at 9 p.m. Commissioner Faulkner.
Aye.
Mayor Maples.
Aye.
Commissioner Edwards.
Aye.
Commissioner Hendricks.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Van Oster.
Aye. Aye.
So we have returned from executive session with no action taken at this time. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion is made by Vice Mayor Van Oster, seconded by Commissioner Faulkner to adjourn. Can I see a show of hands? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.